Over at Square Table Gaming, we've been paying attention to our audience, and in our latest poll, our viewers told us they'd like to see us tackle lore from other games. With Kirby's Dream Buffet on the way, we thought it would be fun to look into the lore behind the Kirby series. Originally, we wanted to start with Dreamland and work our way up, but the rabbit hole that is Kirby lore is deep. I personally had vague memories of my time with the early Kirby games, and thought it was amazing how every game ended with a cosmic horror. But the interwoven story behind these final bosses is a web that would take serious time to truly unweave. With that in mind, we thought it may be better to start with the most recent Kirby title, The Forgotten Land, and see if digging into Kirby lore was something you'd want to see more of. Needless to say, we're getting deep into spoiler territory, and after finally finishing Kirby in The Forgotten Land, I highly suggest you play the game before getting into this video. Before we get started, we wanted to take a second to ask you to hit that subscribe button. The more viewers subscribe, the better our channel plays with YouTube's algorithm. If you like Elden Ring lore dives, or enjoy how we handle this look into Kirby's lore, consider subscribing so you don't miss out on future content. We stay active with our commenters as well, so if there are any games you want to see lore dives into, let us know and we'll see what we can do. In a time long before Kirby was pulled into the Forgotten Lands, a lifeform arrived in the new world called Fectophilus. For unknown reasons, it immediately began attacking the wildlife around it. The sheer power of this creature drove its ambitions to conquer the land around it, and while somewhere, deep down, there was a light pushing back against these evil impulses, it was not strong enough to stop its invasive attack. Unfortunately for Fectophilus, there existed a civilization in this world with the intelligence to capture it and put an end to its attack on the native wildlife. Of course, as any civilization would when coming into contact with something so powerful and otherworldly, the scientists of the New World started to experiment on their captive, giving it the name ID-F86. During their experiments, a warp incident occurred, and the small, compassionate soul hiding within F86 was somehow separated from its body, giving birth to our friend, Alphalus, or as the scientists called him, ID-F87. Alphalus was born with no memory of his former self and escaped, wandering the new world free from the experiments F86 was undergoing. Eventually in their studies, the scientists of the new world discovered F86's true power, the ability to travel between dimensions to the land of dreams. The scientists decided to explore this land and leave their world behind. Unfortunately for F86, this meant they would be stuck in their pod, forgotten and fractured for years, until someone else discovered them in the lab Discovera. Leon and Carol were the leaders of the animal kingdom that rose to prominence after the land was abandoned by the civilization that built the cities we see when we first arrive in the New World. They explored the lands together, where Leon eventually found Lab Discovera. While exploring the lab, he came across F86. It was then another power of this life form was made known, the ability to influence others through their dreams. The powerful psychic energy of this creature spread out through the dreams of the animals in this land, slowly taking control of them. Leon became Leongar, and created the Beast Pact to do F86's bidding. The otherworldly invaders' plan was to reunite with Alphalus and take back its true form, so it could continue to travel across dimensions and conquer everything in its path. In order to do this, it needed a workforce to get Lab Discovera running again. This is why Kirby and the Waddle Dees were brought to the Forgotten Land. Leongar was instructed to gather food, capture the Waddle Dees in order to use them as a power source for Lab Discovera, and finally, capture F87, Elfilis. From here, Kirby and the Forgotten Lands begins. Kirby is brought to the new world, and Alphalus helps him save the Waddle Dees from whoever is capturing them. Eventually, we do come across King Dedede, only this time he's being influenced by F86 into allowing his subjects to be used as a power source, and capturing Alphalus. Apparently, Kirby's eternal rival was too unruly to wrangle without mind control, and even required a menacing mask to further F86's influence over his mind. Unfortunately for F86, Kirby brings the king back to his senses, and he helps Kirby make his way up to Lab Discovera. Once here, Kirby faces off against Leongar, who explains that the people who came before warped away to the land of dreams, and once he reunited both halves of F-86, that same power will be granted to him. Of course, Kirby defeats Leongar and saves Alphalus, but after doing so, F-86 drops all pretenses and takes full control of his pawn. He tells us how we've ruined everything, his careful planning, and that there will be no more plans. Now is the time to consume everything. It fuses with Leongar and pulls all of the other wildlife around it into its body, creating a hideous mass not unlike the horrifying creatures you'd find in a Resident Evil game. In fact, the hallway battle with this creature, Fecto Fargo, is heavily reminiscent of the end of Resident Evil 2. Unfortunately, this battle doesn't go our way. Upon defeating Fecto Fargo, it attempts to absorb Kirby and Alphalus, and it does manage to capture its other half. From here, we see this creature's true self, the ultimate life form, Fectophilus. Now reunited, it plans to continue its conquest of every world it can find. Of course, Kirby's determined to save his friend, and uses the new abilities discovered in this world to free Alphalus from the prison that is the ultimate life form. After this, Fectophilus's body is clearly deteriorating, and it throws everything it can at us, opening portals in every direction to stop Kirby. But thanks to a big rig and the power of friendship, it ultimately loses the fight. You would think this is the end of Fectophilus, but no. From here, its mind retreats into its own dreams, the Fargo dreams, and brings Leongar with them in order to take control of him again. It would create a powerful team of phantom beasts using the power of dreams, take Leon's body, and again try to recapture its ultimate form. Kirby arrives to put a stop to these nefarious plans and save Leon from its influence. He succeeds, but a butterfly that acts as the one passing judgment on final battles devours F-86's soul and becomes the Morpho Knight, an enemy we may dive into in the future. Should we take on the final Coliseum challenge in Waddle Dee Town, we learn that defeating the Morpho Knight did not put an end to Fectophilus. The soul of the Morpho Knight acted as a sort of surrogate for Alphalus, creating the species born of chaos, Chaos Alphalus. His desire for revenge against Kirby was so strong that the Morpho Butterfly gave his soul one last chance to enact it. In the end, the light of Kirby's hope overcame the desire for vengeance within Alphalus, and he willingly became one with Alphalus. Only this time, the light in Alphalus's soul had grown so strong that they now lived as one creature, two halves brought together, no longer controlled by blind ambition. In various other Kirby adventures, we learn that the cosmic forces these games deal with can be influenced heavily by light and darkness. For instance, if they're exposed to dark thoughts and feelings, they take the shape of something evil. But if they're exposed to hope, friendship, and happiness, they can become a force for good. Kirby showed Alphalus the power of friendship during their adventure together, and helped the little light within him grow until this cosmic entity had the strength to overcome his darker half. In the end, Alphalus learned the power of chaos was no match for the light within Alphalus, and chose to become a being of light and a cosmic force for good, all because of our happy, hungry, round little friend. The hard turns every Kirby game takes towards the end can give a player whiplash if they're not ready for it. The cosmic horrors we face can seem so at odds with the happy, colorful adventures we experience before fighting them. But in the end, it always comes back to the same lessons: loneliness, isolation, fear, power. These things will ultimately lead to destruction, both personally and in the world as a whole. But friendship, light, fun, and some snacks will bring out the good in others and help them find the light in their lives. We hope you enjoyed this dive into the main antagonist of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. This was a little different from our Elden Ring lore videos, but it was a lot of fun to write. If you have any thoughts on Alphalus, or if you want to continue discussing Kirby lore, leave a comment. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you want to see Square Table Gaming take on lore from more of your favorite games. We look forward to seeing you again for more... Lore Theater? Square Table Lore? Lore Dives? We'll figure it out and get back to you.